The Nexus Arena hung in space like a giant metallic donut with anger issues. Built in the void between three warring star systems, it served as neutral ground where species could work out their differences the old-fashioned way by watching other species tear each other apart for their amusement. Welcome back to the 493rd cycle of the Galactic Gladiatorial Games, boomed the voice of Glix Vorpax across the stadium. His seven-tentacled form waved enthusiastically from the announcer's box. I'm your host, five-time champion, and the only being to survive the Trilaxian Gauntlet with all original appendages intact. The crowd of 80,000 beings from across 7 galaxies roared their approval. Some roared with actual roars, others with clicks, whistles, or telepathic screams that made everyone's beverage containers vibrate uncomfortably. Glix adjusted his ceremonial announcer's sash. Today's carnage is brought to you by Xeno Cola. When your species has between 1 and 17 mouths, there's a Xeno Cola formula for each of them. In the luxury box above the announcer's booth sat Arena Master Druvak. His massive gray form took up 2 reinforced seats, his leathery skin adorned with trophies from fallen gladiators, a finger here, an eye stalk there. Druvak ran the most profitable entertainment enterprise in the known universe, and he hadn't done it by being nice. The preliminary bouts were absolutely brutal, Glix continued. The Mantodian champion liquefied 3 opponents before lunch, and the Kragnar twins synchronized their killing blows so perfectly that the cleanup crew is still finding matching body parts. What the enthusiastic spectators didn't know what Druvak's substantial bribes kept hidden from galactic regulatory committees was that many fighters weren't volunteers. Prisoners, refugees, and unfortunates from less connected species regularly disappeared into the arena system. After all, everyone knew the saying in space, no one can hear your legal complaints. Humans were particularly disadvantaged in the grand scheme of things. Having stumbled onto the galactic stage just 50 years earlier, Earth's inhabitants were considered the equivalent of space hillbillies. No meaningful alliances, primitive technology, and worst of all, no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no psychic abilities, just soft pink skin and a tendency to talk about their feelings. In fact, the only time humans were mentioned in galactic conversations was as a punchline. Did you hear about the human who tried to negotiate with a Vorgun? Asked for a peace treaty and got a recipe instead with himself as the main ingredient. Little did anyone know that humanity's standing in the galactic community was about to change dramatically. And it would all start with one human who was about to turn the Nexus Arena into his own personal statement. The processing center beneath the arena smelled like industrial cleanser and fear. Bright lights illuminated metal tables where new contestants were cataloged, implanted with tracking devices, and assigned to training cells. Species? Droned the board processor, a bulbous creature with 14 eyes and not nearly enough interest in its job. Human, replied the muscular man standing before him. Despite the restraints on his wrists and the bruise darkening his left cheekbone, he stood with military posture. Human? The processor blinked several eyes in succession. I thought we stopped accepting humans after the last one cried himself to death before even entering the arena. Commander Jack Hudson, United Earth Navy SEAL Team 8, the man replied evenly. And I don't plan on crying. The processor rolled all 14 eyes. They all have plans. Next you'll tell me you're going to escape. He stamped Jack's intake form with a tentacle, Cell Block D, known colloquially as Dead by Daybreak. Try to last long enough to be worth the paperwork. As guards escorted Jack down a long corridor filled with containment cells, alien prisoners pressed against their barriers to get a look at him. Is that really a human? Hissed a serpentine creature with metallic scales. It doesn't even have natural armor. I heard humans have to wear their weapons because they don't grow any, chittered another. Jack kept his face expressionless. 4 days ago, he'd been on a covert operation investigating disappearances at the edge of human space. Now he was listening to aliens discuss his anatomy like it was a design flaw. The irony wasn't lost on him, though the humor certainly was. A guard shoved him into a cell. Enjoy your final hours of having all your limbs attached to your torso, human. As the energy barrier reactivated, Jack surveyed his new accommodations, a sleeping platform, a nutrient dispenser, and a cellmate, a reptilian humanoid with emerald scales and eyes that seemed perpetually narrowed in suspicion. "Great," the reptilian muttered. "They paired me with the softest species in the galaxy. I'm Kella, and if you snore, I'll smother you before the arena gets a chance to kill you." "Charming," Jack replied, stretching out on the vacant sleeping platform. "You can call me Throwback." Kella's head tilted. "Throwback? What kind of name is that?" "The kind you earn when your commanding officer says you fight like you were born in a more primitive era." The reptilian snorted. "Well, Throwback, enjoy your brief stay. Tomorrow is rookie orientation. At least 2 newbies die every time my money's on you being one of them." Later that night, Jack lay awake, reviewing what he'd observed so far. The guards' rotation patterns, the 7-second delay in the energy barrier when cells were opened, the way Kella's eyes darted to the ceiling corners when discussing certain topics, surveillance, no doubt. Most importantly, Jack had noticed how the arena master had personally come down to inspect him when he arrived, unusual according to the whispers of other prisoners. Druvok had circled him, sniffed him, then rumbled something that sounded like this one might actually be interesting. If there was one thing Jack's SEAL training had taught him, it was that being interesting to your captor was rarely good news. But it might be useful. Section 3, Training and Tribulations. Rookie orientation turned out to be less of an introduction and more of a culling. 30 new arrivals were herded into a circular chamber with various weapons scattered around the perimeter. No instructions were given. The implicit message was clear: figure it out or die. Jack immediately backed against a wall, assessing both the available weapons and his competition. Most grabbed the largest, most menacing implements they could find. Jack selected a simple staff and a small knife. "Poor choice, human," rumbled a behemoth with stone-like skin. "That toothpick won't even pierce my hide." Jack smiled politely. "Then I won't aim for your hide." When the inevitable free-for-all erupted, Jack didn't charge into the melee like the others. He waited, watched, and when opportunities presented themselves, struck with precision rather than power. A nerve cluster here, an exposed joint there. Within 20 minutes, he was one of only 8 contestants left standing. Kella stared at him with newfound respect when he returned to their cell. "You survived. Without a scratch." Jack shrugged. "I've had tougher training sessions." Word spread quickly through the cells. The human wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. During the following days of combat drills, Jack demonstrated techniques that confused both his fellow prisoners and the trainers. He didn't rely on brute strength or natural weapons, but on strategy, leverage, and an encyclopedic knowledge of how to turn an opponent's strengths against them. "You fight strange," observed Morvax, the ancient reptilian who served as combat trainer. Once a legendary gladiator himself, Morvax had been retired to a teaching position after losing 3 of his 4 arms. Most species fight with what evolution gave them. You fight like every part of your body is a weapon waiting to be deployed. "Humans had to get creative," Jack replied. "We weren't the strongest, fastest, or toughest creatures on our planet." "Yet you dominated it," Morvax mused. "Perhaps there's a lesson there." As days turned into weeks, Jack built a network among the prisoners. He treated injuries the medical droids ignored, shared techniques that helped smaller fighters survive against larger ones, and most importantly, listened. Every prisoner had a story. Many had been kidnapped or falsely imprisoned, then sold to the arena. "The entire operation is corrupt," Kella confirmed one night, speaking in whispers. "The arena matches are real, but they're just the visible part. Beneath that, Druvok runs a massive criminal enterprise. Illegal gambling, organ harvesting, species trafficking. And nobody stops him because He has dirt on half the Galactic Council and terrifies the other half. Plus, the games make too much money to shut down. 17 worlds' economies would collapse. Jack processed this. And what happens to champions who win their freedom? Kella's laugh was bitter. Freedom? There is no freedom. When fighters get too popular to kill off but too dangerous to keep around, they have accidents during training. That matched what Jack had observed. The entire system was designed to extract maximum value from fighters before disposing of them. But there was something that didn't make sense. Why collect such diverse species? Jack wondered aloud. Some of us aren't even physically impressive as fighters. Morvax provided the answer during a rare private moment. It's not just about the fighting, the old trainer whispered. It's about the biochemistry. Different species produce different compounds when fighting for their lives. Fear, rage, determination each creates unique chemicals. Druvok harvests these. The most valuable black market substance in the galaxy is distilled survival response. Jack's first official match was scheduled against a fighter with a 1-2-0 record, a clear message that Druvok wanted the human eliminated. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was surviving when they shouldn't. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary sentients of all configurations. Glix Vorpax's voice boomed across the Nexus Arena. Today we have a special treat, a contestant from that adorably primitive planet Earth. The crowd's reaction was mixed, mostly laughter with scattered boos. On the view screens, Jack's statistics appeared, listing his species' weaknesses: no natural armor, no venomous capability, fragile skeletal structure. Facing our human contestant is the undefeated champion of the Southern Quadrant with 12 consecutive kills and a particular enjoyment for torturing prey, Vrakax the Merciless. The opposite gate opened to reveal a massive arachnoid creature with serrated mandibles and acidic venom dripping from specialized glands. Vrakax clicked his mouthparts together in what passed for a smile among his kind. The odds displayed on the arena wall showed 1001 against Jack. As both fighters entered the central combat zone, something unexpected happened. The various beast pens surrounding the arena containing creatures used for special exhibition matches suddenly went silent. Normally, the smell of impending blood would drive them into a frenzy. Instead, every creature pressed against its cage, watching the human with unnerving intensity. Interesting, murmured Druvok from his luxury box. Release the match beasts. 4 smaller predators were released into the arena, standard practice to add chaos to matches. Typically, they would attack both combatants indiscriminately. Today they circled wide around Jack, some even cowering when he looked directly at them. The crowd muttered in confusion. "Begin," shouted Glix. Vrakax charged immediately, mandibles spread wide enough to remove Jack's head. Jack waited until the last possible moment before sidestepping, not entirely, but just enough that Vrakax's momentum carried him slightly past his target. In that fraction of a second, Jack drove his arena-issued blade into the joint where Vrakax's front leg connected to his thorax. The arachnoid screeched and spun, but Jack was already moving. He wasn't fighting like gladiators typically did with showy moves designed to entertain. He fought with the cold efficiency of someone whose only goal was ending the threat as quickly as possible. "What is this human doing?" Glix commentated, genuinely perplexed. "He's not even trying to play to the crowd." The audience watched in stunned silence as Jack systematically dismantled his opponent, targeting joints, nerves, and sensory organs with surgical precision. When Vrakax finally lay immobilized, Jack approached for the killing blow expected by the crowd. Instead, he looked directly up at Druvok's box and shook his head. "Not today," he said clearly. The arena exploded into chaos. Some spectators booed the lack of a kill, but many more cheered this unprecedented defiance. The match beasts, still avoiding Jack, howled in what almost sounded like approval. In the days that followed, Jack became something of a phenomenon. Merchandise bearing his likeness appeared in arena shops. Betting syndicates scrambled to recalculate his odds, and prisoners throughout the complex whispered his name like a talisman. "Did you see how the beasts reacted to him?" Became a common refrain. Various theories spread. Perhaps humans emitted an undetectable pheromone or possessed some psychic ability unknown even to themselves. The truth was simpler, though Jack didn't share it. Earth's evolutionary history had created in humans a perfect predator not through claws or venom, but through adaptability, endurance, and a uniquely terrifying quality, the calculating patience to study prey for weaknesses before striking. The arena beasts, operating on instinct rather than conscious thought, it recognized what the intelligent species had forgotten, that intelligence wielded with predatory intent was the most dangerous adaptation of all. Druvak was furious at being denied a kill but couldn't ignore the surge in viewership. "The human fights again tomorrow," he announced. "Triple the challenge. And this time ensure he has no choice but to kill or be killed." Jack's cell had become an unofficial gathering place. Kella now served as his self-appointed lieutenant, managing the flow of visitors seeking the human's advice. "The Trilaxian twins want to know if you'll demonstrate that nerve strike again," she reported. "And Morvac says he can get us 15 minutes in the East training room without surveillance." Jack nodded, continuing his daily regimen of exercises. Prisoners watched in fascination as he performed push-ups, squats, and other calisthenics that seemed pointless to species with natural weapons. "What we're building here isn't just about fighting techniques," Jack explained to his growing circle of allies. "It's about organization. Humans dominated Earth not because we were the best individual predators, but because we could coordinate better than any other species." He had been systematically teaching the individualistic gladiators something they'd never learned in the arena: teamwork. How to cover each other's weaknesses, how to communicate with minimal signals, how to time their actions for maximum effect. "But what's the point?" asked Gorvin, a massive fighter whose crushing strength was matched only by his pessimism. "Even if we win every match, we're still prisoners." "That's why we're not just training to win matches," Jack said quietly. "We're training for something bigger." The plan came together in pieces. Morvax provided critical intelligence about the arena's operations. Kella organized the different cell blocks into coordinated units. Prisoners with technical knowledge began identifying weaknesses in the arena's security systems. Meanwhile, Jack continued his undefeated streak in the arena. Each victory brought more attention, more privilege, and crucially, more information. He was now permitted to move between certain areas without escort, a privilege Druvak granted to only his most valuable fighters. During one of these movements, Jack discovered the truth behind Morvax's claims about biochemical harvesting. In a restricted laboratory section, he witnessed unconscious fighters connected to extraction equipment, their bodies producing valuable compounds induced by chemical stimulants that simulated combat stress. Most disturbing was a chart on the wall, showing the relative value of different species' extracts. Humans ranked surprisingly high. Their complex emotional responses created uniquely potent compounds. "So that's why Druvak was so interested in me," Jack muttered. "I'm not just entertainment, I'm a potential gold mine." The final piece fell into place when Jack learned that the upcoming Grand Championship would feature unprecedented security measures not to keep fighters in, but to protect the dozens of Galactic Council members and elite citizens who would attend. The arena would be filled with the very people who enabled Druvak's criminal empire. "Perfect," Jack told his inner circle. "That's when we move." The night before the championship, Jack addressed the united prisoners. "Tomorrow, everything changes. Not just for us, but for every being who's been exploited by this system. Some of us won't survive, I won't lie about that. But those who do will be truly free, not just released into another form of captivity." He looked at each face in turn. "On Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good beings to do nothing. Tomorrow we do something." As the fighters dispersed to prepare, Kella remained behind. "You know Druvak has something special planned for you tomorrow," she said. "His personal champion beast. No one has ever survived against it." Jack smiled. "Then it'll be an interesting fight." The Nexus Arena had never been so full. Spectators packed every tier, with ticket prices reaching unprecedented heights. The Grand Championship was the social event of the Galactic cycle. "Welcome to the most anticipated spectacle in arena history." Glix Vorpax's voice shook with genuine excitement. "Today's final bout features the surprising human sensation, Throwback, against Arena Master Druvak's personal champion, the genetically enhanced Void Ravager." On cue, a massive gate opened to reveal a nightmare made flesh. The Void Ravager stood 3 times Jack's height, its body a twisted amalgamation of the most lethal adaptations from a dozen predatory species. Claws, fangs, armored plates, and what appeared to be organic weapon systems covered its form. In the luxury box, Druvak grinned triumphantly at his guests. "Watch carefully. This is what happens to those who defy the natural order." Jack entered from the opposite gate, looking impossibly small compared to his opponent. The crowd fell into an expectant hush. The match began with a surprising development. Rather than attacking or even attempting to evade, Jack stood completely still, facing the beast. The Void Ravager charged halfway across the arena, then abruptly slowed, its multiple sensory organs fixed intently on the human. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure what we're seeing here," Glix commentated. The Ravager appears hesitant. Throughout the arena, the exhibition beasts in their pens began to make a low, keening sound. One by one, they lowered their bodies in what could only be described as a bow. The Void Ravager, programmed for mindless aggression, fought against instincts it barely understood. It paced back and forth, occasionally lunging forward only to pull back. "What is this?" Druvak snarled, rising from his seat. "Attack, you worthless creation." That's when every light in the arena flickered simultaneously. The energy barriers containing the exhibition beasts deactivated. Security doors throughout the complex slid open. "Now," Jack shouted. Across the arena, coordinated groups of prisoners emerged from maintenance tunnels and service corridors. Kella led one team directly to the control center. Morvax and his group secured the main exits, preventing security forces from entering. On the central view screens, footage began playing, footage Jack had discovered and Kella's technical team had accessed. It showed the truth of Druvak's operation, the kidnappings, the biochemical harvesting, the corruption that reached into the highest levels of galactic government. Many of the elite attendees found themselves looking at their own faces on screen, accepting bribes or participating in the exploitation. "What you're witnessing," Jack's voice boomed through the commandeered speaker system, "is the largest criminal enterprise in 7 galaxies. And today it ends." In the chaos that followed, Druvak attempted to flee. He found his escape route blocked by the Void Ravager itself, now responding to a more primal programming than the one Druvak had installed. "Your beast recognizes what you are," Jack told him, approaching calmly. "And what I am." "And what are you?" Druvak sneered, even as he backed away. "Something your kind forgot to fear. A predator who evolved beyond the need for claws and fangs. We turned our predatory nature into something more subtle but far more dangerous, the ability to see systems, exploit weaknesses, and when necessary bring those systems down." The Nexus Arena incident became the scandal of the century. Galactic news networks broadcast the evidence to trillions of viewers. High-ranking officials were arrested. Criminal networks collapsed as their connections were exposed. And humanity's standing in the galactic community changed overnight. No longer dismissed as soft, primitive creatures, humans were now viewed with a new kind of respect and a healthy dose of caution. 6 months later, Commander Jack Hudson stood before the United Earth Defense Council, concluding his report. "The arena system has been reformed under new management," he explained. Voluntary combat sports continue, but the criminal operations have been dismantled. And the fighters? Asked a council member. Those who wish to return home have done so. Others have formed a coalition to hunt down remaining trafficking operations. They're quite effective. Turns out gladiators make excellent liberation specialists. And what about you, Commander? Ready to return to your SEAL team? Jack smiled. Actually, I've been offered an interesting diplomatic position. It seems having a human who made every beast in the arena bow might be useful in certain interspecies negotiations. As he left the chamber, Jack's communicator buzzed with a message from Kella. The Arcturian delegates are being difficult again. Should I remind them about the human who tamed the Void Ravager, or will you be doing the honors? Jack grinned. Sometimes the most effective diplomacy was simply showing up and letting the stories do the talking. After all, throughout the galaxy, the whisper was spreading, be careful around humans. Even their predators recognize them as apex.